Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Peoples here again, and here to wrap up this first section of World War II, about how World War II begins. Just to recap, we were talking about how Germany, under Hitler's control, began taking over areas in Europe. And so we started talking about Germany being controlled by the Nazis, taking over the Rhineland, as you see here on the map, then taking over Austria. Moving into the Sudetenland, the British and the French gave Hitler the Sudetenland. And then from there, Hitler was able to take the rest of Czechoslovakia. At this point, Hitler makes a deal with the Soviet leader, Joseph Stalin. And so when Hitler attacks Poland, he agrees to let Stalin have the other half of Poland in return for them agreeing not to fight each other. And so then Hitler takes over half of Poland, the Soviet Union moves into the other half. Once that happens, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria fall to the Axis powers. And then Hitler sets his sights on France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Before he does that, he goes to Denmark, then to Norway. And using the airfields that he gains in Norway, he then uses those to attack Great Britain once he gains control of France. So you can see here, World War II has officially started. The Germans, within 6 months of the World War II starting, Hitler has gained control of most of continental Europe. And whatever he doesn't control, it is they're his friends. So Spain and Yugoslavia are friends of Hitler's as well. Hitler then sets his sights on Great Britain. Right now, Great Britain is the only Allied power fighting against the Nazis. Hitler plans an attack of the island, and the first step of that plan is to bring airplanes over and bomb the island. This becomes known as the Battle of Britain, and that's where we're going to start today with our notes and our information. The Battle of Britain was Hitler preparing for the invasion of Britain, where he was going to actually take troops on boats and land them on the island of Britain. But in July of 1940, the German Air Force, known as the Luftwaffe, they were stopped by the British Air Force. The British Air Force destroyed 2,300 German aircraft. The reason the British were able to do this is they had a new technology known as radar. And so as the German airplanes came across the English Channel, the British could quickly get their fighters into the air and could attack those German fighters. Eventually, the Battle of Britain, the Air Force of the British successfully prevented Germany from landing troops onto the island of Britain. And at the time, the Prime Minister of Britain was a man named Winston Churchill. And the quote that you see here on the bottom is his quote about the British Air Force. Never in the field of human conflict has so much been owed by so many to so few. Now, while this was going on, people in Britain called it the Blitz. Nightly, the Germans would fly over and drop bombs on the city of London. And here you can see some of the photographs. This is the aftermath. In the morning, people would, what would happen is people would go to work during the day, and then they would go to the subway tunnels. And you can see that in this middle picture, where they would sleep the night in the subway tunnels. And then in the morning, they would wake up and they would see buildings blowing up. They would see fires that had happened overnight from the German bombings. And then they'd go to work the next day. And they did this for about a month when the German Air Force continuously bombed the city of London. And so this battle, the Battle of Britain, was an important battle in World War II because, one, it's the first time that Hitler actually has to change his plans, and he doesn't invade Britain. And two, Britain was the only Allied country at this time standing up against Germany. And had Britain fallen, then Hitler would have set his sights on the United States next. And so it was a very important battle, and very important victory for the British Air Force. All right, now let's talk about the United States. During all of this, in 1939, World War II starts. The United States does not want to be involved in this war at all. The United States wants to be isolationist, wants to focus on themselves. Remember, the United States is still in the midst of the Depression. In 1940, when Hitler takes over most of Europe, and in 1941, when Hitler starts to bomb Britain, President Roosevelt believed that it was the United States needed to get involved in some way. Even though the people of the United States didn't necessarily want to send troops, President Roosevelt believed it was very important that the United States help the war effort on the side of the Allies against Hitler. And so in 1941, Roosevelt proposed to Congress, and Congress eventually passed what was called the Lend-Lease Act, which allowed the president to give help to any nations that the president believed was important to defending the United States. So what this meant is that the United States now was started to build vehicles for the Allies, started to build weapons for the Allies, and we would send them to those particular areas in Europe. Now, at this time, when Hitler is unsuccessful attacking Britain, he sets his sights on Greece, Yugoslavia, and then he attacks Russia. He breaks his promise with the Soviet Union, and he attacks into Russia. And so the United States, when the Lend-Lease Act is passed in 1941, is not only sending supplies and material to Great Britain, but the United States is also sending supplies and material to the Soviet Union, because now the Soviet Union has now joined on the side of the Allies. And so the United States, although it wasn't involved with soldiers, began to build weapons and vehicles. This buildup of weapons and vehicles is what propels the United States out of the Great Depression. Everything else that was tried attempted to get the United States out of the Depression, but wasn't completely successful. It wasn't until World War II started when the United States finally started to get out of the Depression. Because we were making vehicles, weapons for the Allied powers, all of a sudden these factories now needed workers, and people without jobs now suddenly could get jobs in these factories. And that leads us to the attack on Pearl Harbor. You've heard from some of your classmates about the attack on Pearl Harbor. This is a very brief overview of it. If you want to know more, there is the links on the Moodle site that you can check out. While Hitler is attacking places in Europe, the Japanese, for almost 8 years, had been attacking islands and countries in Asia, and specifically places like China and areas that today are the areas of Vietnam and Laos, those areas. Back then they were known as French Indochina. And so the Japanese were attacking those places, and the United States was asking the Japanese to stop. The Japanese refused to stop. When the United States realized that the Japanese were not going to stop attacking these places, the United States stopped sending fuel, stopped trading with the Japanese, specifically fuel, oil, with the Japanese. The Japanese didn't like this, and the Japanese couldn't continue to take over parts in Asia without the fuel to run their vehicles. So the Japanese military leaders planned an attack on the United States Navy that was parked at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. They did this with the hopes of attacking the Navy fleet so badly and destroying it so badly that the United States would not be able to fight back for a while, which would allow Japan to take over more area. And then once the United States rebuilt its Navy, Japan believed that they could just hold on and wait for the United States to get tired of fighting this war. Unfortunately, although it was a mostly successful plan, the Japanese did not realize the perseverance, the tenacity of the United States, and the intentions that the United States was going to fight this war out till the end. On December 7th, 1941, Japanese airplanes carried by aircraft carriers, Japanese airplanes attacked the island of Hawaii, specifically the island of Oahu, Hawaii, where Pearl Harbor is located. You can see on this map the Japanese started their attack on November 26th is when the aircraft carriers started make their way to Hawaii, and you can see where they got to the day of the attack, December 7th. They were a few hundred miles off of the coast of Hawaii to launch their attack. The attack came in two waves. The first wave severely damaged many of the battleships in the harbor. Matter of fact, this is what Pearl Harbor looked like the morning of the attack. You can see specifically this area right here is where all the battleships were anchored. It was known as Battleship Row. And you could see where they were all located. The colors indicate the results of the attack. All 8 of our battleships were sunk that day. And what's amazing about this is that of those 8 battleships that were sunk, 6 of the 8 were repaired and took part in World War II. Only 2 ships were not repaired and not recovered, and that is the Arizona, which you see right here, and Oklahoma, which you see right there. Those 2 ships were not repaired or able to be repaired. They were damaged so badly. Here you can see the two waves of the attack. First wave coming about 7:40 a.m. Hawaii time, and the second wave coming about 8:40 a.m. What that means is it was about noon, maybe 1 o'clock during Sunday afternoon on December 7th. Football games were going on when the news broke in that Pearl Harbor, Hawaii had been attacked by the Japanese. Here you can see some of the results. The pictures that you see here, especially this one, this is the moment that the Arizona is exploding. The Arizona was hit by 2 bombs. The first bomb didn't do a whole lot of damage, but the second bomb landed in an area where all of the ammunition was. And when that second bomb exploded, the entire ship exploded, lifted out of the water, and sunk right back down into it. And so that is what it looked like the instant it was hit. This is a couple of the battleships sunk in the harbor after the attack. The picture here shows Battleship Row, and this is in the middle of the attack. You can see an airplane right there. That's a Japanese airplane. You can see a splash from a bomb or a torpedo or an explosion right here in this area. Here's another view from a Japanese airplane. Again, you can see Battleship Row. The ship that you see here, this right here, is leaning. That's the Oklahoma that's been hit by a couple of torpedoes, and it's starting to turn over. And then again, aftermath, this is the Arizona after the attack. And then over here is where the Arizona Memorial is located today. The ship is actually still sunk under the water there, and you can see a little bit of it in this picture. That's the front of the ship right there. And they have since built a memorial to those soldiers who died sleeping in their bunks when the ship exploded. In that ship, there are 965 soldiers who died within that ship when it exploded. A total of 1,000 plus soldiers were killed when that ship exploded. 965 died inside the ship. So the grand total of this attack, the other part of this attack was that the Japanese attacked the airplane, the air bases in Hawaii, and the commander there, afraid that the planes were going to be sabotaged or broken down secretly without the United States knowing, the commander decided to put all the planes together in the middle of the airfield. So when the Japanese attacked, it was very easy for them to destroy many of the airplanes on Pearl Harbor. So The Japanese attack was successful. It sank or damaged all of the U.S. battleships. There were more than 2,400 Americans killed, almost 200 airplanes destroyed. However, the hope of the Japanese was to destroy the aircraft carriers of the United States. And luckily for the United States, the aircraft carriers were not in harbor on that day. And so the United States had its most powerful naval weapon still around and could use that weapon immediately once war was declared. The next day, on December 8th, 1941, the United States declares war on Japan. President Roosevelt goes to Congress and asks Congress to declare war on Japan, and they do so. So, your learning targets, just a reminder of what the learning targets were for this section is, one, that you could explain how the Treaty of Versailles led to World War II. And then the other was to explain how the United States became involved in World War II. And so hopefully you can answer those two. If you want more detail on Pearl Harbor, I encourage you to look at the links that are available on the Moodle site for more information. You can also check out the links on this PowerPoint, as that's also on Moodle. Thank you very much.